Barry didn't know what he wanted to go to school and what he wanted to end up being. So uh, we had to find out. It was our job to find out, to kind of give him a direction what to go, how to go, with what. We ended up getting a private a lawyer, I guess he is.
No, it was like a firm that does that sort of thing.
Yeah, he was the head of a firm in Baton Rouge. We got him over there. He got evaluated. And what he got evaluated with is exactly what he went to school for, production management.
Which is really what I don't do anyway.
Which,
But I'm not in that field.
no, but
Well, just,
it opened the door.
well, it started where I was I knew I was going to college. I didn't know what for, and I got to a point where I just opened up the book and picked, and it landed on marine biology. That's how haphazard I was. So I really, really didn't know. I knew I wasn't going to follow the trades because I'm not mechanically, not inclined, but not as interested as the other two guys were. So went through the testing to see what my aptitudes were, and it really it leaned towards business, but more on the operation side. And what Nichols had at the time was something called production management. It's a business degree, so but it was specialized in production management, which is like running a plant, not a plant, but a factory. It got me the job that I started my career with, which I've talked about before at Saya. It opened a lot of doors for me, and I'm still in the business side, but now I'm on IT. So it did pave the way in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't say I'm doing what I went to college for today, because I'm not.
But we were concerned at what he would do and what he should do according to his capabilities, like we had for the other three. And we were glad to see that, especially when he got hired on at Saya Motor Freight. We thought that might be the beginning of what he had studied for, or at least open the doors for it.
Yeah, because I was a dispatcher there, and that's not really what it was school for. But a lot of times it just gets you started, and that's what it's for. Because I was pointing in a completely different way before, and at least this pointed me into the business world, whereas that's where I am, and that's what I've done in my career. Business, if I'd have gone into marine biology, I don't know what I'd be doing today. But on the business side, I feel like I've had a pretty good career. Some successes, some lows, some highs, but I've done everything from dispatching to running fleets. And today I run help desks and IT support for a whole division. So I think it set me up for where I needed to go. And because coming out of when I think how we grew up here was that I think Larry and Debbie knew they were going to college. Gary was iffy. I knew I was going to college, just didn't know what for. So the hard part was over. I don't think you had to convince me to go to college.
No,
but you had to help me figure out what the hell for.
At least with Gary and Larry, they were here every day after college, or at least close by. They didn't need to come say, well, we call you up and see what's going on and everything else, but he had to because he was away. But going back before that, while you were going to college, you worked at the grocery store stacking groceries, and you were offered the opportunity to have your own store one day if you wanted it.
Well, I was actually an assistant manager at 15 of that Bayou Vista store. Pretty young, and so I knew I liked doing that, and I was over cashiers and all that stuff, and all the money, stuff like that. So when that happened, I think it I kind of like doing that. So I kind of led the way, because I had some. If you want to go back into history here, I mean, I had some things that I almost did that would have been ill-advised. I contemplated the Army for a bit instead of college. We talked about it, but I don't think I was that serious. I almost went out offshore on a boat one time and got talked down from that one too. You remember that one? Where I was going to go on a boat?
Yeah.
and you talked me off of that one. Had no idea what that was going to be, but I was just doing it. I don't know. I was just trying. I was fishing around for something, which I think Comar was the name of the company, but it was basically a tugboat or a crew boat, a deckhand. I think that would have been miserable. So I'd have got seasick. But all that aside, career-wise, I think took the right path, and I feel comfortable where I'm at, and I don't look back and say I should have gone and did something different. And I've fired many people. I'm in the process of hiring people now. I've had many people report to me. I've kind of been through that whole world of reading people and understanding how that all works and whatnot. I wouldn't change that. I think, looking back, I made the right decisions going to where we want to go. I don't regret none of that, because you could always look back and say, what if I'd have done this? What if I'd done that? I don't think that way.
I would think that we had some influence on you while you were going through them troubled times with the company you with now. Because you would call me pretty often and we'd talk for long hours.
Well, it's related.
I kept telling you that politics is main thing. Politics is politics, no matter where you're at, whether you're in government or you're in company. It don't make no difference. That's what you were run up against.
Well, it's funny. I'm at Mama made a comment the other day when I was talking to her on the phone about being what I was doing and being so young. I kind of flipped from that young guy leading all this stuff. I'm not now. Now I'm the old guy. So now I have all the experience behind me of all that kind of stuff, and it relates to a lot of the stuff that you used to do in the sheriff's office. Because no matter if you strip everything away, people are still people.
Yep.
And that's the number one hardest thing when you're running something, is people, dealing with people, because everybody comes to you with different problems, different issues, different capabilities, and different personalities. And all that comes flying in when you're dealing with somebody and your work situation, whether it be hiring somebody or whether it be firing somebody, which is the worst of the options. I've done that, and that's really ugly.
Well, I think we have to. I want to relate this because it's important to me and your mama. Going through that process with that fella, that vice president that didn't like you, that's what it was. He wanted you out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't give in to back off in a corner and start bitching and everything else and all that and start talking about him to everybody and all that. You didn't do this. This is what someone would have wanted in order to fire you. You conducted yourself in such a way as to they could not get at you. You didn't give them any information or ammunition. And while this was going on, eventually the other people that hired you in the other department was looking at this. Don't think they weren't. I mean, I don't mean they made it that special thing every day, but they saw how you handled yourself. And when the need arises, when the occasion arises, they went ahead and they brought you in as a consultant, then they hired you. So that was from your behavior with this other fellow.
20 years earlier, though, I'd have told him to kiss my butt and would have been gone.
And that's not the way to act.
It wasn't easy.
You get immediate satisfaction that way, but you don't get later on satisfaction.
Well, this idiot's no longer there, and I'm still here. And it's people look at me. An old timer at the company looked at me a while back. He looked at, "You're still here, aren't you?"
And they're looking at that. You've been through it, and you're still there.
He laughs. He said, "You're still here," and he's not. I said, "Yep." And I leave it at that.
I believe I told you that my sheriff always told me I was a real good deputy, best deputy he ever had, but he didn't understand politics. But I'm still there. I stayed the full 12 years he was in until he retired.
Yeah.
So you maintain yourself in your way that you want to be.
Yep. Well, I mean that's yeah. That's it. That's it on the career side. I think there's no regrets on what we did and how we did it, and I'm getting toward the end of my own career anyway. But you learn to start rolling with things and just.
And you went to jump ship, Javik.
Oh yeah, I read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
3 weeks before they folded in, huh?
No. 3 weeks before they were cleaning up I was a vice president there, and 3 weeks before, when I turned in my notice to leave, I didn't get any kind of pushback at all. They were happy as hell because they weren't going to have to pay me a severance, and the reason was because they were cleaning out. It was political. My boss, they had just let go. They were letting go everybody that worked for him, and I was the only one left because I was out with both my boys, so they couldn't do it. So when I returned with my notice, it made them happy because they didn't have to do it. And so I voluntarily left, and I forfeited any kind of dispensation or compensation. And so I don't mind that because the integrity side of that, I could have did it and let them pay me for walking out, but I just wanted to get out of there.
But they paid you for transportation back home, back to Houston.
No, the new company paid for that.
The E company. Who's that?
The new company,
Oh, the new company. Okay.
which is basically who I work for now. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
And here I am stuck at a motel on the 4th floor with Kathleen and the kids while the transition is going on. And I got at some point I got to come down. Claustrophobia is sitting on me in that little room.
yeah.
I got to come outside and breathe free air.
That's something.
I did it 2 mornings in a row.
You, Gary, and I kind of have that whole thing, and that produces some funny stories. But it's not funny when it happens to us.
No.
But people like hearing them because it's kind of. Sometimes people don't understand it, but I remember the car rocking when Gary had it up on jacks when we were younger, probably in our teens. And I could see the car moving around, and because he's stuck. I wasn't claustrophobic then, but I got it later, and I understand how he felt doing that. And when we get stuck in certain situations, and it's a little different, but it has some funny stories to go with it.
When I got down to the street level on the sidewalk, here I am. I'm out. That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
Then after a while, I went back up. That didn't last too long. You had already bought a house.
Yep. Yeah, so that's kind of the Houston thing. But, so the one thing I think that you and I did a lot was fish,
Yeah.
because I think we did a lot of fishing, more than probably you could when everybody else was in the house, because you had time. Your shift was off early enough in the day. We'd launch a tractor and back, and we'd go catch stringers or whatever we wanted, pretty much. Which you can't catch a cold back there now because there's nothing in the water anymore. But we used to go and hit the cuts, come back with 15 bass.
We can't say that though. We just ate a bunch of fish yesterday that Larry been catching.
That's true, but it's not as, you can't do it as much. The fishing is just not as good as it used to be. I mean, that's a fair statement. But we did a lot of that. I think I remember Mr. Babin. Remember him? Remember that fishing trip? I think it was in Bay Natchez, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And why don't you tell that story? You remember, don't you?
I worked with 2 electricians named Babin and Pete Corinth. Both older than me. Took him fishing, and Babin would constantly laugh at Barry when he made him talk. Barry had a deep voice, he thought. He'd like to hear him talk.
Yeah, but we went fishing, and I had this toy fishing rod, right?
Yeah.
Little bitty one. And so go ahead, you can tell it.
I don't remember.
Okay, I'll tell you then. All right, so you remember we were back there in Bay Natchez, and we
Yeah.
went off to that left cut, and me and you were in one boat, and him and Pete were in the other boat, and we were fishing, and I hooked 3 stripers, big ones, off that little casting rod, and he was beside himself that I caught those fish, and they weren't catching nothing. And I hauled in 3 in a row, and I caught more fish than they did that day on this little bitty casting rod. And you remember how Mr. Babin was, right? He was kind of animated, scratching his head and making a big deal out of it. Thought it was funny. I was probably 6 or 7 when that happened. I remember it. I remember that story pretty well. I'm going to tell a couple stories. I'll fast forward to our Lake Concordia trip, fishing
Yeah.
trip.
That's a good one.
And the reason I'm bringing that one up, I think all the men, me, you, it was Floyd, Rocky, Larry. Did Gary come on that one? No, I don't think
No,
he did.
Gary didn't fish.
He's not a fisherman, but who else? Hubert. No, Mr. Gerald.
Yeah.
Mr. Gerald was with us too. So we took your boat, and then Floyd took his boat, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, me and Rocky, I think, fished together, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a few stories to go on this one. There was a tournament being fished in the lake that weekend. This was 1996, 97-ish, I'm thinking, right? So this was a few years ago. And we went up there, and there was a bass tournament being fished on the lake. It's a slot lake up in middle part of Louisiana by the Mississippi coast, Mississippi border. And so we get in there, and me and Rocky go to the extreme in the lake where it had a lot of weeds and lily pads and all, and I'm worm fishing. Of course, Mr. Gerald don't think I'm fishing right. Floyd doesn't think I'm fishing right. And didn't me and Rocky hooked some big bass. I hooked a big
All
one.
Rocky did was throw it out there and let it hang.
And I was doing the same thing. I caught a bass that would have won that tournament that weekend, if you remember. And Mr. Gerald was scratching his head like he always does. Didn't he throw a reel in the water that day too?
Well, when we came back before we went to bed that night. I think we slept over there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
And Gerald having trouble with that reel. Floyd was real close by. All of a sudden, Gerald said, "That's the last time you'll give me any trouble." Threw it in the water. Floyd said, "Jerry, look what he's doing. He's throwing his reel away." I said, "Let him do what he wants. It's up to him." I said, "Been giving him enough trouble." Floyd was a cousin.
Yeah. I think you and Larry fished in one boat. Me and Rocky fished in another. And
It was me and Gerald. I don't.
Larry and
How
Floyd.
many boats did they have?
We had three because Larry fished with Floyd. You and Mr. Gerald fished together, and then me and Rocky fished.
Whose boats were there?
Your boat was me and him. You were with Mr.
I was with Gerald.
I think he brought his boat.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So we had three boats out there.
We had a flat tire on the way they're going down.
On the way.
That made Gerald bitch even more when he didn't catch no fish.
I think we stayed there one night, fished 2 full days.
Yeah.
It was fun. They had a lot of stories. That's the only big one I can remember is Mr. Gerald throwing his reel over in the water. I caught a big ass bass that day. They couldn't believe that I was with what I was fishing and how I was fishing that I should have caught it. Because remember the duck? I think Rocky, there was ducks flying in the lake and all that where we were.
Well, what's going on in the cabins? Wasn't there a story there going on somewhere with some people?
Don't remember.
Don't remember that too much.
Oh, so I don't remember much else about the trip except I fast forward on the way back out. Me, Rocky, and Larry. I was driving the blue truck that Jared has now, the one that you used to have.
The green one.
The green. That's the one. That one. that green one. And on the way back, we were coming, and we were on this back road driving. I had this cruise on, pulling the boat, and a car come out in our lane and hit the car in front of us head on collision. Remember that very well because I ended up going in the ditch and almost losing control of the boat and coming to a skidding stop.
Gerald says one of the cars flew over y'all.
It was a white Thunderbird. Remember it well. I remember Rocky was in the back seat. Larry was in the front seat, and I was dinking. Larry was dinking on the radio, and I said, "Oh shit!" And that was all we had time for.
That was your truck.
It was my truck at the time, and that car flew over us because it hit the ladies in front of us, flew over us, and it ended up on her top. And then we skid down, kind of. I had skid marks, analog brakes on that thing, but I skid through the whole thing, and I hit the hood and that kind of stuff in my truck. Me and Larry and Rocky jumped out trying to help the people. We helped one lady out the car, I can remember, because the car was against the woods. I think 2 people, maybe even 3 people died in that wreck. I know the driver of the car in front of us died immediately. She was done. And the other lady we helped out, I think she died at the hospital. And the girl in the Thunderbird upside down died while we were there. And not trying to make a bad, ugly story, but me and Larry and Rocky were trying to help all these people and all. And we had glass in the boat. And I remember one fellow, a black man, comes up to us and said, "Boys, Rocky might remember this. Boys, I hope you guys go to church and are God people." We said, because I don't know who was driving that truck through that. He saw us go through the whole thing, and it was amazing that we didn't get caught in that wreck. But it was a pretty sad story. But my truck had white paint on the bumper, and I had glass in the boat, and the boat did shift up on the trailer about 4 inches. And the problem was the car behind us. If they wouldn't have saw what was happening, they'd have hit that boat and then launched it right through the truck. It's a pointy boat, and Rocky was in the back seat, and so it could have ended a whole lot uglier than it did. So that was kind of a sad ending to a fun trip. That was probably an hour, half hour into driving home that day. So that was one fishing story.
I'm glad we're all here today.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Except Floyd, he died of disease.
Yeah, Floyd was a fisherman that we fished a lot with. You and I did. I remember him almost sinking his boat at the Falgo Canal over at Lake Decad because he couldn't put the plug in. I remember that. I remember one fishing trip you and I went on where we were in Lake Decad and we got hung up on a sandbar and we had to get out the boat and push. Remember that?
Yeah, that's in the Rackosee.
In the Rackosee, yep, that's where it was. And we had to get out the damn boat.
We started off by... No, we finally got you a rope out there.
No, I'm talking about the other one, just me and you. That story
yeah.
You're talking about is there too.
Yeah.
But the one with me and you got stuck by ourselves. There wasn't nobody else fishing that day, and we had to get out the boat and push it off the damn sand.
And that other one I'm talking about is when you thought you had to go under the power line, and that's not the way the bayou went.
I took a wrong turn and it was trimmed up, and I went way into a very short, shallow.
Started off by throwing a bait out there so you could hang a string, and then a string to tie it to a rope.
But that was you and Mr. Gerald.
Yeah.
And y'all got it was in your boat though, and then you pulled us out.
You still got that bump under there that hit that pipe going into the Rackosee.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then the other time we're in Punishan, you and I, we in that canal. We had to come out of there. We were catching fish. We had to come out of there. The net was so bad, you couldn't stand it no more.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
another fishing trip.
And then last year we caught 99 speckled trout on Lake Decad too, just by drifting. That was a good trip. That was a 2014 Thanksgiving holiday weekend. And
Gerald and I were talking about some of them trips lately.
yeah,
There were some good trips. There also were some dry runs.
a lot of dry runs. Me, you, and Uncle Bubba went down at Burns Point one time too, and went out there. Remember, and we lost your one of your fly rods that you had. It flew out the
That
boat.
was Punishan and all the way out, all the way down. I don't know what the
No, that was Burns Point.
Well,
Burns Point was that. That's where that was.
Burns Point?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Burns Point was off of 90.
Right. That's
Going
where
out to
you
the
lost
Gulf.
that rod on Burns Point.
Bubba was there?
Yep. I don't know. It was one day we went and he brought him with us. I don't know.
We didn't do nothing.
We didn't catch nothing, but you lost your rod.
Talk about your kids. This one almost died.
Oh, you want me to talk about that? I can talk about that. All right. So I'm going to do a lot of talking. Now you're off the hook. I'll talk. So I have 3 kids, daughter Emily, and then sons Jason and Nicholas, who are twins. And Jason was born with what they call TEF. It stands for tracheoesophageal fistula something. It basically means that his esophagus didn't attach to his stomach. So he was born with a major birth defect. So day 2 of his life, he was born in New Jersey, Nick and him were born. Jay was turning purple when he came out. He couldn't when they take a baby when you're born, they want you to start crying right away. He wouldn't cry, and they couldn't clear with the syringe they do. They couldn't clear out the gook, and so he turned purple and was getting pretty blue, purple and blue immediately. So one of the interns there kind of pegged it. It's a kind of an odd condition, but he pegged it, and so the next morning they brought him from New Jersey over to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and he had surgery the next day. And they actually physically detached his esophagus and connected it to his correctly and did all that sort of thing. They had to go in through the side, collapse his lung, and then he was in intensive care for weeks after that. The hard part about that whole scenario is we're in New Jersey. Mom and Dad are there because, well, no, I think Deb, I don't know, at different times you guys were there, but when they were born, I think Mom and Dad, you were there. And so Jay got rushed over to Philly. At the same time, Kathleen needs a drug transfusion because she bled a lot during the birth, so she was in critical. She was in the hospital in Jersey. So was Jay. Nick was out with Mom and Dad at home. And me and Jay were over at Philadelphia Hospital, Children's Hospital, and Jay was having surgery the next day. And I had gotten a job offer from the company in Houston that I was moving to.
Explain that and how it went.
So the day before they were born, I got a job offer. And no, I'm sorry, the offer came the day they were born. And I talked to Kathleen, who was sedated, and said, "I got a job offer in Houston. What do you think?" And we had a long conversation that she didn't remember. I took the job. So after the kids were born and she come out of that, and we did have a conversation. I don't know when the conversation happened. She said, "Well, what about that job in Houston?" I said, "We talked about that. I already took it." So it was kind of funny that she didn't remember any kind of discussions of me taking the job. But so going back to the day, brought Jay to the hospital. They run him to the hospital the night before. The day we were having the surgery, I'm over there with Jay by myself. Kathleen calls me because she needs a transfusion and wants only my blood, no other, which they couldn't do because they have to screen the blood. But nonetheless, before Jay was in surgery, she needs a transfusion. So we're working through all that, trying to figured out what we're going to do for her, make sure she gets through her transfusion. At the same time, Jay's about to go into surgery. The lady that the surgeon she did the surgery comes talking to me, and so I have this job offer at the same time I have to respond to at the same time. No, let me rewind a little bit. The job offer came the day of the surgery. So at that same time, I'm working through that, and Jay's in surgery. And at the same time, Kathleen's in another hospital with Nick, who was still there for that second day because he had a little issue, and I'm in Children's Hospital with Jay, and he's having surgery. I'm trying to keep back and forth with Kathleen, see what's happening with her, and talk to Mom and Dad. And my phone died, so I was having all kind of problems. So the surgeon, she came out after the surgery because it took hours. And then got me, and I was flustered because my phone was dead. I couldn't talk to nobody. She was having blood transfusion. I said, I don't know what to do. She brought me in her office and let me sit at her desk and help me call people. And now this is the surgeon. This is not the nurse. This is not, and so she did all that. It was a very stressful day because it's a major surgery for a kid, and it's something that you don't know if they're going to make it, and then you don't know what quality of life they're going to have after, because as I started reading about all the side effects, there's all kinds. So it turned out really well. The surgeon did a wonderful job on him, and as we found out later, as other doctors looked at Jason, and she did an excellent job. We were in the right place at the right hospital with the right surgeon, because there's only a small handful of surgeons that can do that kind of surgery. And she was the one, and
Do you remember her name?
I think it's Jones, but I think her first name might have been Sarah. I'm having a hard time remembering her name. I remember what she looks like, because she was for being a surgeon, she was very gracious, and she was good at what she did. And
She wasn't godlike.
Not at all.
Some
She
of
didn't.
them
She
more.
didn't act highfalutin at all, and she saw I was kind of flustered, which I don't get flustered very often. I was flustered, and she took me in her office and calmed me down and helped me get on the phones and do what I needed to do, and because that was kind of a big deal. So that's kind of what happened with Jason, and turns out her surgery repaired him very well. The only side effect he has now is a little bit of asthma, which there's about 10 other things that we could list that are usually side effects to that kind of birth defect. So 50 years ago, Jason would be sitting here listening to me right now because they didn't have the technology or the know-how back then. I'll back up a little bit and talk about Emily then. Emily was born breech. So it's the funny, and this is more of a funny story. There was, 50 years ago, breech wasn't a good thing either, but she came out butt first and folded in half. When the doctor pulled her out, he held her up and showed me my new daughter, but she was folded in half, and I didn't see any legs. So I panicked at first, like, where's her legs? And he goes like this, and he pulls them apart, like, whew, because I didn't see any legs. So that's why Emily's so flexible today, I think, because the way she was inside mommy, her feet were tucked behind her ears. Yeah, so our children didn't make it easy on mama. So then Nick had because he was on the bottom, Jay sat on him through the whole pregnancy. Nick had to wear a helmet for his first 9 months of his life.
He had a square head.
He had a
Not necessarily square.
no, he had a
Out of
egghead.
square.
He had a oblong head. So Nick had that. So that's kind of the story of them and what happened when they were born and that sort of thing. And I don't know. That's a good story, I guess. There, mom and dad were in New Jersey to help out, and I think we talked about the story, but offline. They were there for 3 weeks, and were ready to go home. I was starting my new job, but I was going to do it locally, up in the mountains, ride with a driver. So I did that, and they decided, we're going to just wait a couple more days before we leave, and then that's when Kathleen's uterus ruptured, and she started hemorrhaging. And if mom and dad wouldn't have been there, because I was in the mountains away from home, Kathleen I don't think she'd have made it because she would have probably passed out from loss of blood. So long story short, they were there when she started hemorrhaging and helped her get an ambulance called and all that kind of stuff. Got her to the hospital. She could have surgery to repair her ruptured uterus. That happened 3 weeks after the boys were born. So at about 3 to 4 or 2 weeks after that, that's when we drove cross country to Houston to move. So that was a very eventful time for us as far as the kids, knew this. She's cut up twice, my wife Kathleen, and
Didn't Larry help her drive home?
yeah,
Had to stop every 500 miles and let her take a shower.
oh Lord, don't get into that.
It's a private joke, really.
Uncle Larry was helping us with the kids up there, and Kathleen liked to take a fair amount of showers, more than one in a day, and he reacted to that.
Larry's been, every time Barry needed him, Larry was flown to Dayton and New Jersey. Not Atlanta, huh?
No, he came to Atlanta too. He helped me move.
Three times.
It's Carol that didn't see all the houses. Larry's
No.
been to everything, every one of them.
Okay, Joanne's brother, Bubba, had when Barry was born. I got to go to that.
We told that story already.
Okay. Aside from that, later on, when they're a little bit more grown up, the two boys that's left, they arrived here one day with just fumes in the tank, no money to put gas in it. We talked about when they come in, they had no place to go. But they wanted to go to Houston to Grandma Hyman's place. And we couldn't let that happen because we knew darn well that wasn't going to work out. So we told him, stay here. You can stay here as long as you go to school. And if you finish school, when you're here, you go to work. Well, it went on for a while, but it didn't work long. Joe, one of them, didn't.
Joe and Chris.
Ended up getting married with a girl from there.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris went in the Air Force, got married over there. So
Well, Joe went to high school with me for a little while
yeah,
at Assumption. So when he was living here, he was actually in the same school as me.
yeah, they stayed here a while, but not that long.
Okay.
They eventually went on their own, and we still keep in touch with them. And then in the process, somewhere in the, did we cover Mike and Andy coming here?
Yes, Mama did.
All right.
Mama covered that in detail, Dad.
Yeah.
So she did a good job of that. So
Yeah.
I'm
yeah. The story about my apartment, my shop. Did that come out?
yep,
Who brought all that out from zero to what?
Mama.
It
Mama?
don't leave me nothing.
Well, you want to talk about the shop? She talked about you built the shop and it ended up being
Yeah.
used for Larry and then Mom.
No, it's my shop. Then I wanted it. Me and Debbie agreed that it was going to be for her reception. That's where she wanted
for a
it.
wedding.
I built a crown of things that you walk through over the driveway, so that when people come in, they walk through it.
Yeah, because Debbie and Rocky got married in a church, but the reception was here
Yeah.
at your house.
That was brought out already.
Yeah, well, no, not in the detail, but the apartment was that it was originally built as a shop for you, and then it turned into that. That was the detail left out. But then after that, it turned into a temporary residence for Larry and Carol. Then it went from that to Grandma.
No, my mama stayed in there 3 months while we moved our house.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, there you go. That's part of it. So the apartment next door is referred to.
And
First it was a shop, then it was a reception hall.
Yeah.
Then it turned into Larry and Carol's house.
Yeah.
Then my mom lived there for a minute.
Yeah.
Then Larry and Carol did before that, and then Grandma Hyman lived there.
Not 10
and,
years.
And now Miss Flo occupies.
She's been there 12.
Miss Flo's been there 12.
And I don't get rent for it.
So
Make sure you know that.
So we built that. We built that way back when, and the local priest, was up there. I'll tell a little story. So
Father Tom.
me and Father Tom were on which is a close friend of the family's. He was the local priest at the time, Father Tom Renzino, and Pop from Houston, Grandpa Hyman, was here, and he's on the ground. Me and Father Tom were up there, and he couldn't get over how he looked up there. Who's that?
He had been, he didn't curse, but he'd been putting out some pretty close to cursing what he used.
He used it one time and laughed.
And he used it one
he
time.
hit his finger.
And then all of a sudden, a little later on, he found out there was a priest on the roof, nailing the roof down. And when he found that out, he said, "Boy, I shouldn't have said that. I didn't know there was a priest up there." And he said, I looked at the priest and said, "Why are you here? Why aren't you over there at the church?" That's where priests belong.
Father Tom was in
That's what he believed
old
in.
clothes and a cap, and me and him were up there nailing shingles. And Pop couldn't get over it, and it was kind of funny because he couldn't believe that a priest was on the roof hammering, and it was funny. But that's the story of the apartment. Break. Oh, Jared wants me to tell a story about my broken leg. So that was Deb and Rocky's wedding. So when Larry and Carol got married in 19 whatever year they got married, I don't know. What year did they get married?
Not sure.
1980.
81?
No, 83, 84, somewhere in there. 82, maybe. Anyway, so I was standing in their wedding, and so was everybody else. And 3 days before the wedding, I played baseball in high school, and I broke my leg 3 days before the wedding. So I had to serve with. I broke my leg in two places, and so it was a big deal because Carol, among all the other stresses going on, she had to worry about the brother-in-law with the broken leg. I did end up getting wheeled up in the and served in the wedding, but it was very short. So that's the story about the broken leg 3 days before. I think Carol almost had a heart attack. What else could happen? Larry called her up. Guess what? What? Barry broke his leg. Yeah, so that happened.
You were hurt and you still served.
Oh, that was not. Breaking my leg was the most painful thing I've ever had done to me. That hurt. I broke it in 2 places, broke the big bone. So, playing baseball, which I really love to do. So, it was just one of my things. Nick, about a month ago, said, they were talking amongst themselves, Daddy's not faster. Nick says, I'm faster. And so they said, Dad, I think I'm faster than you. I said, no, you're not. He said, yes, I am. I said, no, you're not. I said, okay, let's go. So we got on the street. I said, we're gonna run. We got on the street and we said we're gonna run. We're gonna have a race. So all 3 of my kids and me got on the street and we raced. And I smoked, including Nick, but they were laughing their butts off because they were laughing the way I ran. And I told them at the end, I said, I tell you, I could beat you one time. I said, I can't beat you again because I'm about dead, but I'm still the fastest. And they're talking about it again, and I'm going to smoke them again. I can't run multiple races, but I can run fast for one time.
Again, my speed.
Jay, I'm way faster than you. So I had my kids when I was, Kathleen and I we had Emily when we were 39, and then the boys at 38. I'm sorry, 38. We had the boys when we were 38, and then we had Emily when we were 38, and then the boys at 40. So I'm an older guy raising young kids, which is a little different because that's probably the end of the opportunity to have kids, and there's good and bad to that. The good is you have a little bit better capability of taking care of your kids. A little more better financially because when I was 20, I didn't have much, so it would have been harder to raise the kids. But on the other hand, I'm older, harder to keep up with them, and your energy level and that sort of thing is a little tougher at this point. So having younger kids, when I go to my class reunions, and all my classmates have grandkids my kids' age, which is just a little weird, but on the other hand, like I said, it doesn't make, I still go to the baseball games, bring them to all their activities, and I am usually the oldest. I was at Nick's football game one day last year, and a little girl comes up to me and says, "That your grandkid?" And that was Nick, and I said, "No, that's my son." I'm older than most of the dads around, and because the head coach would say, I've been coaching longer than any of you are alive. I said, except me. I said, the rest of them, yeah, not me. So me and Kathleen are typically a lot older than our kids' friends, moms and dads, and we kind of get used to that. But like I said, there's no regrets for waiting that long. I think there's a lot of, either way you go, there's benefits or there's drawbacks or whatever. Having them younger, when you get older, you get them out the house and you're younger. Instead of having fun in the beginning, you have fun at the end. It depends. So I don't say it's necessarily better or worse, but it is our situation, and I think it's cool. Well, let me talk about a story. Then going back to Kathleen and I getting married.
Okay.
So Kathleen's dad is originally from here, Pierre Park, where Dad's from. So when we were dating, and I think we were already talking to get married, and so Mr. Roy, and who's Kathleen's dad, and Dad are sitting here, start connecting the family tree. It started getting kind of closed in at the other side, and I told y'all got to stop. Who's your daddy? Or who's that? Who's that? And then I think it distant, but not very far distant. I think there's some relations there, some sort, because he was born in Pierre Port.
He also told Kathleen not to go embarrass the family over there in Pierre Port. I remember that. You? He said, remember, I got relatives over there, so you behave yourself.
Yeah. So it was they started tracing the family tree, and I said, "Y'all have to stop now. Before you find something out, we don't want to know." So Larry and Gary and me and Dad even served as scoutmaster for a time because in Pearport it was hard to keep a troop going, and Larry and Gary got to be Eagle, and it disbanded when it was my turn. So Dad filled in for a bit. Never made it to Eagle, but Gary and Larry were Eagle. I made it to Life, one step from Life. But most of the Boy Scout campouts were held back here in the woods.
Yeah.
Even though we had a lot of campouts, we did a lot of canoe campouts and pirogue hikes and various things like that. So we all three were very active in the Scouts.
I couldn't handle being a
Well,
scoutmaster too much. The kids were too much for me.
Well,
Parents treat you like a
keep-
babysitter.
keeping the troop together is tough in Pierreport because the commitment and the volunteers are just not there. And it's just hard to get enough boys interested, enough parents interested in scouting. So it just it's cyclic. It would happen, and I hear that they're actually here now. They're trying to get it back together, and there's some interest. So interest would spike and ebb, and then so it's been very difficult in this smaller town to keep a troop or a pack over the years. So. And it's just something that's always been a struggle in Pierreport. But there's a lot of colorful stories coming out of scouting because we all did it. A lot of camping trips, a lot of times in the woods late at night with storytellers and scary stories and all kinds of different things that we did. So we all three did that.
I was a Boy Scout at for about 3-4 years.
You were a Boy Scout as well?
Yeah.
Here, huh? Yeah.
Are
No.
you boys and scouts?
My boys were in Cub Scouts for about 3 years, and we got less active because of sports. It's hard to commit to the football and the baseball. Well, I'm very big on scouts, so I put them in it, and we did a lot of stuff with scouts. And so, but I decided that when we started getting to the sports, you can't do both, and you're going to do one. Well, you can't do both half. So I've decided, since they really like baseball and football, that I'll let them really dive into that. They had the Cub Scout experience for a couple of years. I wish I could continue on, but it was difficult where we were too because the pack was really looking for more. A lot of people were trying to get out of their roles and their volunteers, and as we came in, we were getting pushed into it. And it was just getting very difficult. So I got little taken back with the pressures of it and too as well because they were trying to make me do something I didn't have the time to do because I travel. A lot of things with my work I travel, and if I'm going to be a coach or if I'm going to be a scout master, I got to be there all the time. I can't do it halfway, and I won't commit unless I can do it all the way. So that's kind of how that worked out.
Did they cover that about Beans? You gonna edit this? Larry Bean, a bugler for some military funerals over here.
I actually did some of that too.
Yeah, you did too.
Yeah,
I'm glad I brought
a
that
few
up.
of
Then
them.
I wasn't sure of that.
So as a Boy Scout, and Pop was just pointing out that Larry used to bugle, which playing taps at funerals was one thing that I know he did a lot of. I also did a lot of that because people would actually call up personally and ask you to do it. Because when a father would die locally, especially World War II veterans, we would go play taps. It's something that in scouting is kind of promoted. I did a lot of that, especially when I was in high school. I know Larry did it. Rocky actually played taps for Kathleen's dad's funeral. So it's that's. I probably, if I had to count how many funerals I played taps for, I probably did about 8 to 10 of them. I remember a couple of them in particular. I also would go to the courthouse in Napoleonville, play taps or colors for ceremonies. I did that. I did a lot for American Legion. At one time, they had me on speed dial. So I would go to Napoleonville, Labradorville, and I'd play taps or colors when the flag was raised or not. So And Larry did a lot of that too. We played trumpets and band, and that lends itself to a bugle. Although I didn't. He actually played with a bugle. I just played with my trumpet. Did that. Yeah.
See, that's something I completely forgot to bring up.
No, that was good. I covered it for him. You'd go in full scout uniform when you played taps, and a lot of most of these were military funerals. So you had the color guards, you had the gun salute, and you had all those various things going on. I look back on that as a positive experience because I think that's very respectful, especially of these veterans in the wars, the World War IIs, the Vietnams, those kinds of wars. Those guys need to get proper send off, and I think you got to do it that whole way, and that includes taps.